2 in the morning, an empty intersection somewhere in the suburbs. A single car rolls up and stops at the red. The street is silent. The cross street is empty. There are no other cars in any direction, no pedestrians, no camera that anyone can see. 3 seconds later, the light flicks to green. The car drives off. The street is empty again. So here's the question nobody really stops to ask. How did the light know? What watched that car arrive? It wasn't a camera. It wasn't a pressure sensor. The driver never pressed a button. Yet somewhere in the system, a decision was made. A relay was thrown. A timer was changed. Something detected the car and decided it had waited long enough. The answer involves a Victorian London policeman who died in a gas explosion, a coil of copper wire buried under the asphalt right where you stop, and a chemical reaction that has been happening under the street every time you've ever pulled up to a red light. Here's the first thing most people get wrong. They picture a camera high on the pole, scanning the road, recognizing cars with software, deciding when to switch the light. That's the modern intuition. It's also wrong almost everywhere. Most traffic lights in North America, Europe, and Asia don't use cameras. They use something far older, far simpler, and almost completely invisible. The detector isn't above the road, it's underneath it, and you can see exactly where it is if you know what to look for. Look down at the asphalt the next time you stop at a red light. Just in front of the white stop line, where your front tires usually rest, there's almost always a faint rectangular outline cut into the pavement. Sometimes it's a square, sometimes a long, thin rectangle, sometimes a pattern of repeated diamonds. The outline is filled with a black rubbery sealant that's slightly different in color from the surrounding road. Most drivers see those shapes thousands of times in their lives without ever wondering what they are. Those shapes are not cracks. They're not road markings. They're not maintenance lines. They're the thing that detects you. The black sealant covers a groove that was sawed into the asphalt by a road crew. Inside that groove, looped around the perimeter of the rectangle, is a coil of insulated copper wire. Sometimes one loop, sometimes 3 or 4 loops, all stacked on top of each other. The ends of that wire run sideways under the road into a metal cabinet you've probably seen on a corner near most intersections. That cabinet is the brain of the entire light system. Quick favor before we keep going. If you've ever wondered about the engineering hiding in plain sight in your daily commute, hit that subscribe button. We dig into the science behind the things you walk past without thinking. Now, back to the road. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. That coil of wire is doing something invisible right now, even when no car is on it. The cabinet on the corner is sending a small alternating electrical current through the loop, oscillating somewhere between 10,000 and 200,000 times per second. That current creates a weak magnetic field above the loop, projecting upward into the air over the road. The field is invisible. You can't feel it, you can't hear it, but it's there, hanging in the air about waist height above the pavement, every minute of every day, year after year. When a car rolls onto that loop, the engine block, the chassis, the drive shaft, the entire metal body of the vehicle steps into the magnetic field. Metal doesn't just sit passively in a magnetic field, it interacts with it. The car becomes, in effect, part of the circuit. The presence of all that metal changes a property of the loop called its inductance. The loop's electrical fingerprint shifts. The cabinet detects the shift instantly. A change of just a few % is enough. The cabinet declares in its limited mechanical way that something is now sitting on the loop. A pulse is sent to the controller. The controller adjusts its timing. Your light turns green sooner than it would have if the loop were empty. That's the entire trick. There's no camera, there's no AI, there's no pressure plate. There's a coil of wire, an oscillator, and a circuit that's been listening to the rhythm of its own electricity for the past 60 years, waiting for the rhythm to change. Now here's the history almost nobody knows. The story of traffic control didn't start with cars, it started with horses. In the late 1860s, central London had a problem. The intersection just outside the Houses of Parliament, where Bridge Street met Great George Street, was one of the most chaotic crossings in the city. Horse-drawn carriages, omnibuses, and pedestrians were all competing for the same space. In 1866, more than 1,000 people were killed on London streets. Members of Parliament were getting injured trying to walk across to their own building. The solution came from a 36-year-old railway engineer named John Peake Knight. He had spent his career designing semaphore signals, the moving arms used on British rail lines to tell trains when to stop. His idea was simple. Take that exact system, mount it on a 22-foot pillar, and put it at the intersection. By day, the moving arms would tell drivers to stop or go. By night, gas lamps with red and green lenses would do the same. A police constable would operate it manually from the base. On December 9, 1868, the world's first traffic light was installed outside Westminster. It worked for about 3 weeks. Then on January 2, 1869, the gas line at the base of the pillar developed a leak. When the constable on duty opened the operating box, the leaking gas met the flame at the top. The pillar exploded. The constable was severely injured. Some accounts say killed. Either way, the project was abandoned. London wouldn't see another traffic light for nearly 60 years. The technology resurfaced in America in the early 1900s. In 1912, a Salt Lake City police officer named Lester Wire built a wooden box with red and green bulbs and mounted it on a pole. He never patented it. On August 5, 1914, the American Traffic Signal Company installed what most historians credit as the first electric traffic light at the corner of Euclid Avenue and East 105th Street in Cleveland, Ohio. It was designed by an engineer named James Hogue. 2 colors, red and green. Manually operated by a policeman in a glass booth on the corner. And here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. The man who turned that 2-color signal into the system you use every day was a black inventor named Garrett Morgan. The son of formerly enslaved parents in Kentucky, Morgan moved to Cleveland and became one of the most prolific African-American inventors of the early 20th century. In 1914, he patented an early gas mask called a safety hood. In July 1916, when an explosion trapped workers inside a tunnel under Lake Erie, Morgan personally descended into the gas-filled tunnel, wearing his own invention, and pulled out survivors. 7 years later, in 1923, after watching a horrific accident at a Cleveland intersection, he patented a T-shaped traffic signal with a third position, a warning between stop and go that would stop all traffic for a moment before the next direction got the green. That third position is the ancestor of every yellow light you've ever seen. Morgan sold the patent to General Electric for $40,000, the equivalent of more than $700,000 today. Now here's the surprise that almost nobody outside transportation engineering thinks about. Inductive loops have one critical weakness. They were calibrated for cars. A motorcycle has only a fraction of the metal mass of a car. A bicycle has even less. In many cities, the loop sensitivity is deliberately reduced to avoid false triggers from temperature changes, humidity, or aging pavement. The result is that a motorcyclist or cyclist sitting on the line can sit there forever. The loop doesn't see them. The light doesn't change. This isn't a small problem. In some U.S. states, the law explicitly addresses it, allowing motorcyclists to legally proceed through a red light if they've waited a reasonable time and the loop hasn't detected them. The trick some riders use, leaning the bike over, is a real attempt to get more metal closer to the loop. He advised to back up and pull forward again rarely helps. The loop simply doesn't have the resolution to detect smaller metal masses. Cities are slowly replacing the loops. New systems use cameras with computer vision, radar, LiDAR, and even magnetometers buried under the road. Some can detect cyclists, motorcyclists, and even pedestrians waiting on the curb without a button press. Some can identify vehicle types and adjust the light timing accordingly. The Ouster Blue City system, for example, uses 3D LiDAR plus AI to identify every road user at an intersection, day or night, in any weather. But replacing tens of millions of inductive loops worldwide is slow. Most loops are buried in pavement that won't be repaved for years. You've been moving past versions of this same physics in dozens of places without realizing it. The metal detector at the airport. Same magnetic field meets metal principle, scaled down. The automatic door at the supermarket. Some still use motion sensors, but many are inductive, detecting your shopping cart's metal frame. The security gate at a parking garage. Inductive loop in the pavement. Your stovetop, if it's an induction cooker. Same principle, different goal. The same coil that detects your car under the road heats your pan on the counter. The wireless charger on your nightstand. Inductive coupling. the RFID chip in your office badge, a miniature loop that gets energized when you wave it past the reader. Even some industrial scales and factory robots, magnetic field meets metal, doing real work all day, every day, while you walk past without thinking. Every single one of those systems is doing some version of the same thing happening under your tires when you pull up to a red light. A coil of wire, an alternating current, a measurement, a decision. Now for the honest trade-off. Inductive loops aren't perfect. They fail when pavement cracks. They get cut by road crews who don't realize they're there. They need recalibration. They miss small vehicles. They can't tell a sedan from a delivery truck from an emergency vehicle. They produce no useful traffic data beyond presence and absence. And replacing them is expensive. A LiDAR-based system can cost 10 times what a loop costs to install and maintain. Cities with tight transportation budgets keep using loops because they work, mostly, for the cost involved. There are also genuine concerns with the cameras and LiDAR replacing them. Privacy, data ownership, who sees the footage, what happens to the data, whether the city is actually using AI that's been audited for bias. None of those questions matter when the detector is just a passive coil of wire. They matter a lot when the detector is a smart camera with internet connectivity. So here's where you land. That faint rectangle in the asphalt under your front tires isn't damage. It's not a crack. It's the antenna that detected you the moment you stopped. It's connected to a cabinet on the corner that's been listening to its own electricity for years, waiting for a metal object the size of a car to interrupt the rhythm. It's the descendant of a Victorian London semaphore that exploded in 1869. A Cleveland inventor who descended into a gas-filled tunnel to save lives, and a copper coil quietly humming under the pavement of nearly every traffic light you've ever sat at. If you think traffic lights are weirder than they look, wait until we get into how some city traffic systems can predict which way you're about to turn before you do, because the network of sensors under the road isn't just watching the cars at the intersection, it's watching the cars 3 intersections back, and the way it uses that information to decide when your light turns green has more in common with how an air traffic controller works than with anything you'd guess from looking at the pole.